The Old Way is a low-budget, run-of-the-mill Western which is appealing. We don't see many Westerns these days, and when we do, they're usually serious and substantial. The film starts with a small town in the American West preparing to hang a man, Briggs, as there is a hired gun for the town's most powerful and wealthy man, who is also the instigator of the hanging. His ridiculous mustache is the only indication that we are looking at a younger version of Briggs. Mr. McAllister, the man about to be hanged, apparently stood up to the wealthy man and is now about to be executed in front of his son. Suddenly, McAllister's brother, along with several other townspeople, steps in. They assassinate the wealthy man and all of his lieutenants. Briggs does not intervene until a gun is pointed at him. He then murders all of the rescuers, including McAllister's brother, as he prepares to leave with the money owed to him by the dying wealthy man. Please subscribe our channel to recap and click on bell icon button for more videos. A Barry of McAllister grabs his brother's rifle and tries to shoot Briggs, but the latter fires first, killing McAllister. Briggs then points his gun at McAllister's son, but decides not to shoot him and walks away. 20 years have passed. During the interim period, Briggs met Ruth, who inspired him to be better than he was. Briggs abandoned his violent life in order to be worthy of her love. He shaved his mustache and they married Brooke. Their daughter was born after some time. Brooke is a teenager by the time the story resumes. The family lives on their own property outside of town, though Briggs owns a store in town and Brooke attends school there. Briggs is content, or as content as a man of his stature can be. However, if you have led a life that has resulted in the death and destruction of others, violence will eventually find you, no matter how long you have spent hiding from it. Ruth puts up a valiant fight, but it is in vain, and she is brutally murdered. When Briggs and Brooke return home, they are greeted by U.S. Marshal Jared and his posse. They are on the trail of the gang that murdered Ruth. They assumed she lived alone there, and since she was already dead, they made themselves at home. Briggs initially recognizes the marshal, prompting the latter to recognize Briggs. When Briggs asks the marshal who is to blame for his wife's death, the man advises him to concentrate on raising his daughter. Ruth transformed Briggs from a murderer into a good man. Briggs does not need to transform into a monster again. According to the marshal, what the marshal fails to realize is that Ruth's presence in Briggs' life may have pacified the monster, but it is still alive and well deep within him. Briggs enters the barn after learning from the marshal that the killers have left a brutal mess inside, where he discovers a message written in Ruth's blood on a wall more. The Old Way ending. Is Colton Briggs dead? Does he get revenge for his wife's murder? Although revenge is the main motive of The Old Way, the film cleverly subverts it, underscoring the endless circle that the pursuit of vengeance can be. After the marshal and his posse leave, Briggs finishes burying his wife and then burns down his house, taking the bare minimum things with them. Briggs sets out to hunt down his wife's killers. With Brooke accompanying him up ahead, the criminals set up a trap for the marshal and his men, hoping to eliminate them before they have to face Briggs. However, the plans go awry when the group's ostensibly youngest member, a man named Boots, shoots the man closest to him first rather than the marshal is instructed. The marshal and two of his men survived the encounter. Briggs and his daughter eventually track them down. Briggs coerces the marshal into disclosing the identities of his wife's murderers. Boots is joined by Big Mike, Eustace, and James Jimmy McAllister. Even the name of the last one doesn't explain why the criminals targeted Briggs' home. Before heading to Santa Rosa, Mexico, the criminals pick up a large cache of Mexican currency that Jimmy had hidden away. Jimmy is aware that Briggs is on his tail, so he waits for him in a town he is familiar with. They also hire a few locals to deal with the inevitable conflict. Meanwhile, Briggs is in a pickle. While his adversaries are aware of his appearance, he cannot say the same for them. As a result, Brooke volunteers to go into town. Unfortunately, they recognize her appearance and kidnap her. Briggs decides to visit the town after realizing something is wrong. Briggs murders Big Mike and Boots before being shot by Eustace. He also murders the locals hired by the criminals before confronting Jimmy and Eustace. Jimmy recalls their shared history and challenges Briggs to a duel the old-fashioned way. Briggs eventually kills Eustace, and Jimmy shoots Briggs, fatally wounding him. But Brooke kills Jimmy with a gun her father was carrying. Briggs dies in his daughter's arms in one of the film's final scenes. Who is Jimmy McAllister? Why did he kill Ruth? From the film's beginning, Jimmy is Mr. McAllister's son, the boy Briggs spared. As he later tells Brooke, He was born on the day his biological father died. In the years since he has evolved into the monster he is today, and he attributes this to Briggs. Briggs is even considered his second father, and Brooke is his sister. He looks up to the sky after shooting Briggs and informs his long-dead biological father that he has killed Briggs. Brooke can shoot him while he is distracted by his euphoric joy at finally getting his revenge. The Old Ways as a film does not necessarily glorify vengeance, but instead depicts its futility and endlessness. Briggs murdered Jimmy's father, which prompted Jimmy to murder Ruth, forcing Briggs to come after him. Brooke eventually kills Jimmy for murdering her parents. Brooke will most likely hope Jimmy does not have a child out there. If he does, the vicious circle will continue among our Briggs and Brooke psychopaths. The film establishes that Briggs and Brooke do not react to grief in the same way that other people do. Marshall mentions this to one of his posse members when he recalls Brooke not crying after her mother's death. We later learned that she inherited this trait from her father, who, like her, cannot cry despite experiencing great grief. However, after her father's death, the enormity of her losses finally sinks in, and she lets herself cry for the first time. Jimmy wanted vengeance for his father's death, but that wasn't the only reason he went after Briggs and his family. He desired the glory of killing the one and only Colton Briggs and achieving the other man's infamy. Jimmy declares Brooke the monster, the true heir to her father's legacy, just before his death. However, this appears to be incorrect. This ordeal has, if anything, reaffirmed her humanity.